baseball season. Been some injuries in spring training, but they've gotten through spring training okay. The COVID issue seems to be, at least for the moment, under control, at least as far as getting a season going. The rules stay the way they are. I mean, no DH, okay. No expanded playoffs, okay. That's going to be settled, in December. Very ugly. That's going to be settled. But I'm actually looking I really am. I'm surprised. I'm not the Giant fan I used to be, but I'm really looking forward to it. Next Thursday, the start of the season. You cover it every day, that Boston Sports Journal, Red Sox. Let me get a little sense of that from you. Go ahead. Let me hear.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to, a more traditional season here, and hopefully one that enables us to watch 162 games and not 60 as we did a year ago. And going back to where, you're playing every team in your league. It is not the regionalized schedule that we had to deal with last year for understandable reasons at the height of the pandemic. So it'll be interesting to see how baseball deals with the expanded travel and road exposure. But from a fan standpoint, you get to see all the teams in your particular league come in. You get the usual menu of interleague games. So, look, I think, Chris, you and I agree that 2020 was a mess, and it was out of everyone's control. And what they ended up putting together belatedly starting in late July and running through the end of September was better than nothing. But it was certainly not I don't want to say it was an illegitimate season, but it certainly was far from a regular or normal one. And I'll be fascinated to see, can some of the guys who had bad seasons last year, people like J.D. Martinez here with the Red Sox, Christian Yelich with the Brewers, to name two of the more obvious ones, whether they can bounce back. And we've heard people say that it was a difficult season to prepare for. There was that 2+ month break in between the spring training and then summer camp, and then a quick ramp up and no exhibition games, and all the protocols that were in place made it difficult. So I'm wondering, I'm interested to see whether this is kind of a reset, and whether guys like Yelich and Martinez can regain their former level of performance. You want to see if any teams that were kind of surprises and got into an expanded playoff field last year are going to continue with that progress, or was that fluky? A team like Miami that played basically 500 baseball, can they sustain that over 6 months? I suspect not, but that'll be one of the things that we're looking for, and also just to see how well with full travel and everything else, and obviously not operating in the bubble that both the NHL and NBA did last summer, can they maintain the kind of numbers that they've had in spring training, where they literally have had a handful of positive tests over the last month? Can that continue once you go through, flying on charters and staying in hotels and being on buses and all the things that happen that take you across the country over 6 months? Everyone's going to be very interested to see if they can maintain that level of health and keep the virus at bay. It certainly helps that the vaccine is beginning to penetrate the society in general, and I suspect that'll be a very good thing in terms of keeping people healthy in the game on the field. But there's a lot of unknown, and the unknown makes for an interesting season.
The Dodgers are first off, I do think last year, for them at least, I'm not sure if it was legitimate for the Marlins, maybe not even for Tampa, but for the Dodgers, they could have played 300 games. They were the best team.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
they were the most talented team on paper at the start of the year, and they were the team standing at the end. So that, in that sense, I'm guessing that baseball was happy. It was probably the best of both worlds in that World Series, right? You've got the clear-cut, most talented chalk team in the Dodgers in the National League. And then you've got a small market team like Tampa overcoming all the obstacles and taking the best team in baseball to Game 6 of the World Series. But I think in a sense, baseball was probably relieved that the Dodgers were the team standing at the end, because that lent a little legitimacy to the
100%.
result.
I totally agree. I think they didn't want the Marlins to win it, so I completely agree with you on that. And I think as we start the year here, Sean, they're by far the best team.
Yep.
I think there's a big cutoff between the NL and the AL. I think the
Yep.
NL is much better this year. The best
Yep.
division in baseball is in the National League. That's the East. The Dodgers, I think, going into the year are the best team. The Yankees are probably the best team in the American League, but they got some flaws. I don't know where the Dodgers' flaws are, if they have any, maybe a little bit in the bullpen. I don't know where their flaws are. And I also think they're hungry. I don't think the Dodgers are going to be satisfied, over 60 games. I think they might get a little bored in the second half of the year, don't get me wrong. But I think San Diego, with what they did, I think that helps the Dodgers. I think that got their attention. I think it got the front office's attention. I think the players are going to be revved up to have a little rivalry. And I think as we begin the year, I think you'd agree the Dodgers are by far the best team. What's your take on that?
I absolutely agree. I mean, it's almost trendy to pick somebody other than the defending champs at the start of the year. You want to be a little different and get a team that's a bit of a dark horse. But boy, unless they get their knees cut out from under them by the virus and have guys go down or have a lot of injuries that they're not anticipating, the Dodgers look like they are head and shoulders the best team again. And for as much as the Padres have done, and I salute them for their aggressiveness and the money that they've spent and the trades that they have made, I still think there's a decent gap there between those two teams, although I would expect that I think you could make the case that the Padres are probably the second most talented team. But I like Atlanta a lot too. And I completely agree with you that we're starting to see a shift now. I think, probably the American League had been the better league for a while, but I think you might have to get to, I don't know, 4, maybe 5, if you're ranking 1 through 30 before you get to an American League team. The Dodgers are 1, the Padres are 2. I'd put the Braves 3. And then, you could make an argument that, the Mets are in the top half dozen, given some of the improvements they've made. And I agree with you about the Yankees, Chris. I wish we could disagree and go back and forth on some of these, but we're on the same page on a lot. The Yankees have a lot of talent, but if they don't get bounce-back seasons from Kluber and Taillon, then that rotation, I think, is very suspect.
Very suspect.
They've got arguably the best starter in the American League in Garrett Cole. And, when you have one of those actual, no doubt about it, number one guys, that's a huge boost. But one guy doesn't do it alone. And if they don't get Kluber and Taillon to bounce back and be good 2 and 3 or 3 and 4, however you want to put them, you don't know what you're going to get out of Severino when he comes back. There's too many questions about that Yankee rotation. And yet, I think they win that division because Tampa's obviously taken a big blow, having lost both Snell and Morton. That's a huge loss for their rotation. Toronto's better, but I don't know that their pitching's deep enough. The Red Sox will make some improvement, and I expect them to be 500 or a little bit better, but they're not ready to challenge the Yankees. So the Yankees might win that division by default. And if those guys click and rediscover who they were, then they could be a very good team. But that's asking a lot. And frankly, talking to people who have watched both those guys, there are some people who are suspect about both Kluber and Taillon's chances to regain that previous form.
Wow, Sean McAdam. We'll continue with him in a sec. Does a great job. Boston Sports Journal. We're back here on Mad Dog Unleashed.